Eagle-Kequahtooway. My name is Janine Wendolf, and I'm the Acting Director of Indigenous Arts here at the Banff Centre, and want to welcome everyone to today's Decolonizing the Narrative session. I'm grateful to have brought my family here and live on Sacred Garden Buffalo Mountain, but I also have a home in Treaty 4, where our special guest is joining from. I've met Jolie BigEagle-Kequahtooway, I think maybe 14 years ago. I think my children were quite small when we once connected, and since I've met, I've learned so much from her arts practice and the way she lives her life, her love for the buffalo. So I'm really excited to be able to welcome and to have that knowledge shared here in our Decolonizing the Narrative space. And so I don't want to take too much energy away from our special guest. So I'm going to hand it over. Jolie, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi there. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Everybody okay? So yeah, I'm Jolie BigEagle-Kequahtooway, but before I start, I always like to smudge, especially when I'm going to tell some stories, and to help me kind of bring out the stories that need to be shared, and the stories that I always like to share are the ones that come from the heart. So I'm going to start with a smudge. I'm just going to light some prairie sage from Treaty 4 territory that we picked this summer, and and then offer that to you as well. And so just smudge my eyes to see good things, smudge my mouth to speak good things, smudge my ears to hear, to listen, smudge my mind to share my knowledge, protect my knowledge, share my heart, protect my heart. And then just send gratitude to my body. I send, just be grateful for this body. It carries me every day. And I just like to offer that to you too in this virtual space. And, I believe in energy and energy transfer. And although I can't see you, I know some of you are there watching and listening and paying attention, and maybe you need some of this smudge, and so I send it out to you in this space where we're tethered together by this invisible thread that I can't see, that you can't see, but we can feel. Yeah, so I'm going to start my timer here because I want to make sure that I'm wary of my time, so that I know not to go on too long, because otherwise I probably could be here, for a couple hours. So I'm just going to share my screen, and of course it's not at the beginning where it should be. So my topic today is Rematriate. And I called it Bringing Back the Matriarchs because about my practices around bringing back the buffalo. And I thought, the bringing back the buffalo and bringing back the matriarchs is aligns together. And I thought, what a great way to broach this subject. So I just want to give an introduction. I know there was an introduction online about who I was, but it's always good to hear it from the person. So I'm Nakota, Cree, and Soto. I'm from the Wiper First Nations, but I live in Regina, and I've lived in Regina for since 2004. I have a civil engineering degree from the University of Calgary, mathematics degree from what is known as First Nations University of Canada. But I work right now as an interdisciplinary artist. I like to say interdisciplinary buffalo artist or Tatanka artist. And so everything I do, just it's everything buffalo: paint, bead, storytell, watercolor, working with buffalo rawhide. That's my medium of choice. I am mother to 5 children. Our youngest is 11, and our oldest is 32. And and then I have 3 boys in the middle. And I have 2 adopted children. One, he has both his parents, and his dad is my uncle, but we've adopted him as our own. And then my son adopted a brother, so he's become a son to me as well. And I'm grandmother to 22 children, and those are my brothers and sisters' children. So they call me grandmother. So I take that title, and I'm really proud to be a grandmother. So my topic, that I wanted to talk about, and why I chose Rematriate when we're talking about decolonizing the narrative, is because I have a very, very strong mother, a very, very resilient mother. And in the picture that you see there, there's a picture of me and my oldest daughter, Rebecca, and my mother, Doreen. And this was a picture taken on July 1st when we're working on changing July 1st from Canada Day to Buffalo Day. And my mom is one of my biggest supporters. She comes and out to some of the events that I organize. We've had many discussions over the years on thoughts and beliefs. And I think, one of the arguments that I had with her growing up, and that those moments when you're challenging, you're challenging authority. And of course, who do you strike out first? You challenge your mother, because it's a safe place to challenge, right? And so I remember having a conversation with her about culture, and how, I would say, you never taught me about my culture, and you didn't show me anything. And it was a lot of finger blaming for her, towards her. And now as a mother, I'm like, I can't believe I said those hurtful things to her, because she taught me a lot about culture, but I didn't understand it was culture at that time. How to respect visitors, and how to give them the best that you have, how to feed visitors, right? How to look after family, extended family, and how to take care of your siblings, and how to respect our elders. There was so much that she taught me that I didn't appreciate. And so I just honor her. I honor her today. And although we might get into, now I call them discussions, I even if it turns into some kind of argument, I like, what, let's wait 24 hours, we'll cool down, and then I'll apologize. That's kind of my motto. No matter what, I'll apologize. She's has lived on this earth a long time, and she deserves a lot of respect. And so I will be the first to apologize. I think she knows that. The other pictures, there's a picture of my grandmother Ethel and my great grandmother Mina Passip, and they were from White Bear, which is in southeast Saskatchewan. And my grandmother Ethel passed away when I was a teenager, so I didn't get to be able to be a part of her life as much as I wished I could have. But I remember that she made the best life that she could for herself. And I remember her house on White Bear. It didn't have running water. It had an outhouse, wood stove for heat in the center of the house. And I remember going to get water for us, and having to strain it from one bucket to another bucket, strain the bugs out of it. And then she would boil it and, make it into soup or tea. And when I look back and I think, maybe at that time I thought, wow, this, we don't have running water, we don't have a bathroom. Maybe and in those young eyes, I didn't appreciate, just the resilience that my grandmother had. But looking back, I remember she had a garden, and she, in terms of today's perspective, having a garden is, that is something that that you're wealthy to have a garden. And so looking back, my grandmother was wealthy. I remember walking by her, and she had, hand me some peas, and I got to eat, sweet peas right off the pod. And while I went back and into my makeshift fort in the trees, and so I had some really good memories of her as a child. And in the corner here, this is my cookum Jeanette Watson, and she is from Ochapowace. And I was raised by my stepdad John Watson and my mom, and so I was raised on partly raised on being from Ochapowace. And so I wanted to honor her because she was like, I think she was 4'11", or maybe 4'10", but I remember she was pretty fierce. And you listened to her, and you didn't talk back to her. And she raised many children, grandchildren. And looking back, I just adore her, and what she taught me. I remember, one of the memories that stands out is she would sew. She would make geometric blankets, and that's influenced my art practice, just wanting to emulate her, and remind myself of her, and those times growing up, with lots of family around. I really appreciate that, and makes me, miss the old people that in my family that we used to have. So, when I started thinking about this topic and how I wanted to share, and what I wanted to share, and looking at these images, a big part of things that have shaped my life. I think, as I was, growing up, and wanting to understand who I was, I knew I was an Indian as a youth, and then when my mother began her spiritual journey to trying to discover her own identity, of course, we got to come along on that journey. And so, we would start to, go to ceremony, and we would, whether it was a Sundance, or sweat lodges, or pipe ceremony, or just being out on the land, so this was like 30 years ago. A lot of times I felt like I there was a lot of hesitancy for myself as a young woman to be involved. It seemed like there was a lot of I don't know what you would call it, a lot of resistance, and so there were many times when I was called or challenged and asked if I was on my moon time at these ceremonies. And moon time is, you're being on your period. And I thought, this isn't an appropriate conversation I thought that I should have to have with the community. And so I challenged a lot. I remember crying a lot. I remember being angry with my mom. Why can't I participate when I'm on my moon time? That was my biggest question when I first started to attend ceremony, is how are we so powerful? And people would say, well, you girls, you women, you're too powerful on your moon time. To the effect that sometimes I would hear, like, you could cancel out the ceremony if you're on your moon time. And so I started to think, well, if we're so powerful, right, what does that mean? We have this power. And then, I started to think about traditionally, because I would hear stories about traditionally when before colonization, that women would, when they're on the time, they would be taken aside to another teepee or another way away from the village, and they would set up like a moon camp. and then they would be left there to and looked after. Somebody would be like a older woman would go and look after and feed them or water them. But it started making me think, as women, when we tend to live together, we all kind of sync up. And so I'm sure there would be a period in the village where all the young girls would sync up. And so, would they all go to the moon camp? Who would protect them? Who would look after them? And I know those matriarchs are there, but maybe it was a time of you know, um, gaining strength and resilience and being able to look after yourself, and developing this kind of what I would like to think of as like a warrior spirit, that resilient spirit. And maybe it's not such a bad thing that young women were put in this moon camp, if that was the outcome. And so it's still something to think about. It's not something that I fully understand in terms of pre-colonial times, but it's made me think, right? And question this. We as women, were also, I've been told that we can, we're, as men are able to take lives, right? They have that, only that one ability. But as women, we're life givers, but we can also be life takers through our cycle, our menstrual cycle. And so we have that power, I guess you would say, power to bring life but also take life. And sometimes I think that gets distorted, right? I don't think that some people think of it necessarily as you know like a cleansing, right? That is a cleansing period for us. And so it can be misinterpreted sometimes. So this, for me, this naturally brought up a question, and that was, if women are so powerful on our time and on our moon, then where are our women's ceremonies? Where are the ceremonies that we can have, where we can come together on our moon and hold ceremonies, have those medicine ceremonies? And I know that there's one ceremony that that happens monthly here in this territory, and I think from social media it happens in other territories, where during the full moon, women will come together, and they'll have ceremony to even if they're not on their moon, and on their menstrual cycle, they'll come together during the full moon, and have a little feast, and have prayers, and sing songs, and drum if they drum, and or use the rattles to sing songs. And then they'll light a sacred fire. And what they do at the ceremonies differs from who's teaching, but that, I feel like that's been one ceremony that has risen to within the communities. I remember going to one of these moon ceremonies. I I I remember going, but I remember it was over 10 years ago, maybe closer to 15 years ago, um, where at this moon ceremony, I asked a couple of the women that were there, and it was a sweat lodge too. And so I asked the women during, I think, the third and fourth round, where are our women's ceremonies? What are our women's ceremonies? And so it was a seed that was planted, because we had some discussion around it. And I remember feeling like they were asking the same question. And so I question when people say that women, girls that are on their moon, that we can cancel out ceremonies. I wonder if that comes from a colonial perspective, and and kind of tries to negate that cleansing time for women. And and that there could be this opportunity for us to come together and use this energy, use this power to help us, to educate us, to share stories, to participate in ceremonies, and to take on that role that we should have taken on if left to our own devices, and not been brought into this colonial world. So, I was thinking about, my own journey, and and one of them is, in my mother was a part of this event that was happening within the communities called the Unity Ride. And the Unity Ride took place in the early 1990s, and my daughter, Rebecca, got to participate in it as a young girl. And one of the teachers on that ride was Orville Looking Horse, who's the 19th generation keeper of the white buffalo calf pipe. And this is a picture of him in this slide. And and thinking back to that time, like 1990s, I think it was 1992, it was the 500th year celebration of Columbus's arrival. And I know that there were these celebrations that were happening, but it was also this pushback, and this, these kind of calls to action on how we shouldn't celebrate this. And these there were many art activists and ceremonial activists to look at, how are we going to move forward in the next 500 years. And so this Unity Ride was a vision that was to mend the sacred hoop. And I think that was Black Elk's vision, that the sacred hoop was broken. And so this Unity Ride, that was a horse ride and also a run walk that my mother participated in, and it went from Dakota Wahpeton to Devil's Tower to Standing Rock to Bird Tail in Manitoba, Pheasant Rump to I might have gotten some of the dates mixed up, but I know there was this loop, and some of the rides would last for 30 to 60 days a year. And I believe, for the one ride was about 4 years in length. Every summer they would go and ride and do this relay run. So my mother was a part of the relay run. And I remember we began this I call it this pilgrimage, right? This pilgrimage to Greengrass, where Orville lives, and his family, the Looking Horses, would have sun dances, in their community. And that was our introduction to Sundance. And it was also an introduction to ceremony, introduction to women's roles, men's roles, and strictness. And at the time, the Sundance wouldn't allow what we say, white people, Caucasian people to attend. It was trying to bring back that ceremony without any interference. And so there was, security at the entrance. And and it was a difficult time, but it was something that people who wanted to be able to have ceremony wanted to have it without, any kind of colonial influence. And so, so seeing all this unfold and being a part of it, and wanting to understand, these connections, these ceremonies. And and then there were a few times where, I remember not understanding my role, not understanding why, I being on, again, my moon time as a young woman, and not being able to attend the Sundance. And we had come so far, to go to the Sundance, and I was told I couldn't participate, and I couldn't be around the area, and I had to, sit in a car that was, I think, it was, 35 degrees Celsius. And so it was like so hot. I remember being so hot. And, my mind was like, why? I don't understand why, you know, and being angry. So it was kind of a mixed blessing of being introduced to this ceremonial life, but then this other part where I was angry because I felt like I was excluded. And that's not to say, specifically Orville or, he did that, but it was like it was the community at the time, the female matriarchs of the at that time who made sure that we, as anybody on their time, didn't go to Sundance. So I really didn't understand that, and so I'd always bump heads with my mother too and question, and it was a very interesting time in my life. And then going to green grass, there's a story that Orville shares, and being the 19th generation keeper of the white buffalo calf pipe, he would share the story of the origin of the pipe, the sacred pipe origin of what we say the chanupa, and it was brought to the Lakota people, the Dakota Nakota people, by a woman, and they call her white buffalo calf woman. And and so there was that other story there. And I'm like, oh, there's a woman who has brought the pipe to the people. Who is this woman, right? And it's been 19 generations. And so we as women, where do we fit when we go back? How do we fit in this history going back? This intrigued me, this story of this white buffalo calf um woman. And so I think that was the beginning of gathering an understanding and a little bit of I don't like to say power, it wasn't that. And I don't call it authority either, but I started to start to question everything around me in terms of, what is colonial influence and what is, the indigenous influence and history and ceremony. And is there such a thing as a pure ceremony anymore? Right. And another moment that influenced my life is, I think it was the first time I ever participated in a sweat lodge that was run by a woman, Orville's sister. And and so she led the sweat and she sang the songs. And I just remember being in awe because this was my first experience with a woman being in that position, being a medicine person. When I think of a medicine person, I think of somebody who is able to sing the songs, conduct the ceremonies, and has those rights to be able to do that, and is respected in the community. And so that was opened my eyes because I hadn't seen that up here in Canada. And green grass is in South Dakota, by the way. So this really led me to this opening of my eyes of who am I as a Nakota Cree woman, right? And understanding that I have this significant role to play within my community. I don't know if I'd say play, but I had this significant responsibility within my community, and it's not to be taken lightly, right? And so, when I think of other things that have influenced my life, I can't believe it's been 10 years since Idle No More was enacted. And sometimes I think, why don't we honor our women more? We have these four women, these four matriarchs from our community of Saskatchewan who led the way to promoting direct nonviolent action towards injustices that we see, towards calling out issues or people that might not have the best interests for Indigenous people, and taking a stand against those injustices, whether it was uh, protests or bringing back ceremonies, round dance in the middle of Winnipeg, Portage in Maine, and and so I just wanted to acknowledge them, right? And Sheila McLean, Nina Wilson, Sylvia McAdam, and Jessica Gordon. And Jessica lives here in Regina, and Nina doesn't live too far from here. And I know Sylvia still lives up north, and Sheila, I believe, lives in northern Saskatchewan as well. So I thought there's got to be a moment in time where we can honor them and acknowledge their contributions to not just this province, but Canada and internationally, because, they began this for me. They're like this, it's like the rise of the matriarchs is happening, unfolding before my eyes. And, really influenced not just my life, my children's life, my family's life, and my community's life. And so I just wanted to acknowledge them in this presentation. So I'm a little, let's just say I'm a little older, so I'm not that media savvy. But I remember, when I started my Instagram account, I remember there was hashtag Rematriate that caught my eye. And it was a collective, a woman artist collective that started to post and hashtag this Rematriate and showcase women doing things in their community, or showcasing art, or showcasing education, or showcasing maybe hunting or trapping or fishing, doing things that might not be considered non-traditional, but technically are traditional, and using social media to send out those posts and those videos, pictures, and make them viral. And I thought, wow, Rematriate, what does that mean? And so even I think the last time I checked, Rematriate, it wasn't in Google. I should actually check it right now just to make sure I'm not lying. So it's I don't know if it's a word yet in the dictionary, or in any kind of online dictionary, but it should be. And for me, Rematriate is about honoring our matriarchs, giving them, providing a safe place for them to talk openly, to share stories, to grieve, to weep, to share their hopes and dreams, and to have ceremonies led by women. And so this image down below is are two of my kookums. I call them my kookum Lily and Pie Pot. She's one of the people that I seek out advice from, and that I like to travel with when I go to community events, or when I'm hosting community events. I want her beside me. And my auntie Faye Sue John, she's from White Bear, and growing up, we've known each other for I don't know how many years, right? When I discovered her as my auntie. Yeah, extended family is big for me. And so this was at a celebration, a feast that we had for the buffalo spirit. And So I like to call them my cookum posse. I hope I provide a safe place for them to be able to feel safe and protected. But I know that when I have them with me, I feel safe and protected. And I think we give each other that energy. I hope we do. I think we do. I'm pretty sure we do. There, I love the state, not little, but I love the statement that was written on the sidewalk. We had our July 1st event here in Regina, our Buffalo Day event, and somebody wrote this on the sidewalk: "If you can't respect my existence, expect my resistance." And I don't know if it was a young person who wrote this, but I just thought, wow, that's powerful. That right there is what Rematriate is about. It's about standing up for ourselves, standing up for our sisters, standing up for our community, standing up for our children, standing up and tackling injustices head on. And for me, it's easy said than done. I know that, my husband and I, we have these conversations where, we attend a community event or a ceremony, and then there's somebody says something, and it's like, that's not right. Why are we not trying to address this injustice, even if it's just a statement made, in that one moment? And so I told my husband, you know what, the next time something happens, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to address it. And no matter what the consequences are. And so, I remember being at an event, and one of the speakers got up to share about missing murder Indigenous women. And so the men were on one side, the women were on one side, so I was kind of facing opposite my husband. And this individual stood up and started to sort of berate the women, and it was mostly women that were in attendance. But he had the gall to say, if women stayed home and knew their role, then they wouldn't go missing and murdered. And so he ended by saying, you should just stay home. And I remember looking at my husband across, the hall, and he was looking at me with big eyes. And, I didn't have I didn't feel maybe safe to stand up and say, what, you're wrong. That's not right. That's that kind of thinking that is the reason why we have missing and murdered Indigenous women. I couldn't. I was, here was my moment to stand up, and I couldn't, and I think back to that moment, and I think maybe how would it have gone down if I did? And I, instead I didn't say anything, and I just, put my head down, and nobody else said anything. None of the women there said anything. And so, that brings up, another issue, right? And I'm going to talk about it later. But it got me thinking about, I need to create safe places, safe spaces for our matriarchs. And, and maybe I can't, I can't host all the ceremonies or host all the events and create, safe spaces for all women. And sometimes, of course, we're human. So sometimes we have, conflict, even if we create that safe space, but hopefully we create that safe space so we can address conflict when it happens, and that it doesn't spiral out of control. And so, from that one event that where I felt muted, where I muted myself, I began to formulate a plan to create ceremonies for our matriarchs. And so since December 2018, we've been, I run a nonprofit called Buffalo People Arts Institute that I co-founded with my husband. And so we host solstice ceremonies for the December solstice and the June solstice. And we have them here in Regina or in Treaty 4 territory. I think we went out in Treaty 2 territory on Pheasant Rump last summer, or June 2021. And we bring together 13 matriarchs to lift their chanupa, to pray for the community and to pray for our families, to pray for our children, our chupans, our takoja. And so, it's a commitment that I've made to host these ceremonies. And there's always in the reminder in the back of my head, the little injustices that we've had to endure as matriarchs, as women. Well, as I become a matriarch, or as I enter into, this, I don't know what you call the 50th years of my life, and so, I'm always thinking of that one moment of that time where I couldn't stand up, and am developing that resilience through bringing together matriarchs, and we're all supporting each other in these ceremonies. I think it really goes, speaks to, talking to other matriarchs and other women, and that feeling of not feeling worthy, that feeling of, when I talk to women, and I and we as we have these ceremonies, these pipe ceremonies, chanupa ceremonies, and other kinds of gatherings, I'll find out another woman who will whisper to me, I have a chanupa, right? And she whispers that she leans over and she doesn't want to tell anybody. And, and sometimes, I question, well, why? Let's, bring you into the safe space, come into the safe space, because, that chanupa was gifted to us to pray to Creator, and so, it's also, about empowering women and letting them know you're worthy. You are worthy, and when we as older women accept, that we are worthy and we deserve to practice and be part of ceremony in our culture, then that trickles down to our children, and it trickles down to us, going out and doing other things where we know, what, I'm worthy to go medicine picking, to take my children, to take my grandchildren medicine picking, right? And so these are two images of, we went medicine picking this year, and it's a part of that changing the narrative in my head, decolonizing my head, unbrainwashing, my those tapes that play in my head saying that you are worthy, you need to study, medicines, because that's a part of ceremony. You need to go and find out what medicines you need to have ceremony, right? And so, I'm just really, happy that my daughter and my granddaughter get to be a part of that as I learn these ways that are new to me. And so it's it's that mantra of saying, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. And and so when we talk about Rematriate, creating safe sacred spaces for our women to gather, for me to do the work that I do, and part of the work that I do is, we work with buffalo hides within our community. And, this picture was taken at Treaty 4. And one of our community supporters is Office of the Treaty Commissioner, who is led by Mary Culbertson. And so she brought her staff down to do to help with the buffalo hide, but also to use it as an opportunity to have team building, to scrape a hide. And and so it's sharing these experiences, saying I didn't grow up working with buffalo hides. It's only been something that has been part of my life since 2014, 2015, and so it's all about learning for me. And so, I tell people I'm just learning, but while I learn, do you want to come along? And so it's evolved into something that I enjoy doing and I love doing, and it's about accessing blood memory, and it's about creating the safe space for stories to come out, for elders to share stories, for women, for men, for us to work together. And what is a woman's role? Because they said women were the ones who looked after the teepee. We looked after, and our teepees are made out of buffalo hides, and women are the ones who worked on the buffalo hides, to tan them, to brain them, to make them water, you know, um, not soluble, water resistant, right? And we stitch them together. But then I always question, okay, say my husband's hunting, and they're eating, and they're all done eating, and I'm over here, working on the hide, and maybe a storm is coming. And I'm like, you know what? I need my husband to help me. I will call my husband and I will say, can you come and help me? Right. And, because so and so is helping build their teepee, or however it would go. I don't think it's black and white, women's roles and men's roles. I think, that we work together as community together to build our houses, our teepees, so that's how it is today. And so that's how it probably was 500 years ago. Those roles intermingled and they crossed over because we helped each other as men and women. And so the other image on the right is, I have a few images of myself working on the buffalo hide. This is a hide we worked on at school here in Regina called Mother Teresa. We work with them, every September on buffalo hides. They turned one of the hides into a drum and began a group called Buffalo Boys. And so I'm proud to be able to say that we helped to be a part of that beginning, right? And so this was a buffalo hide that we worked on with some of the families of the students. They had a family night, and so some of the families came and worked on the buffalo hides. I think I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna just quickly go through some of these last slides that are talking about my art practice, and these words that I tell myself. I'm loved, and when I work in community, and whether it's the group on the left here, the Regina Police Service with my Auntie Faye in the background, I'm giving the police service a thumbs up because they're doing all the work, and I get to just story tell, to the group on the right, that's students from Scott Collegiate, where I work as a knowledge keeper. And we were ambitiously working on 2 buffalo hides this spring, and one of the hides they turned worked on making rattles. And the teacher, that was the outcome of their hard work. And so, when I do this work in my community, I think, that I'm worthy to teach this, right? I'm worthy to be to share what little knowledge I have about working with buffalo hides, and that this helps me to feel loved. I create these sacred spaces for myself and for my community, and yeah, and my husband is supportive of that, and he's a big part of why this work happens. So I wanted to share, one of my art pieces, and I had a chance to be at Banff Centre as a facilitator for land-based practice. program last year. We did some online components too earlier in the year. And so I dragged a buffalo hide to Banff, and of course we folded it up. So on the left, I'm trying to weigh it down to try to flatten it so that I could create this big, cutout for cutting out this Tatanka, what I call Tatanka rawhide box. And I think I could, if you guys can see this, this is some of the work that I needed to do to scrape off, some of the layers of skin to get it to, this layer that I could paint on. And so, it took me about 3 weeks to work on this buffalo hide to get it into shape so that I could scrape the hair off and remove the hair. And so that middle picture is all the bags of hair that I removed from it, and the bag of hair that I removed from it, and scraping and scraping and scraping, flattening. And then on the side, I had some buffalo hair. So I made a buffalo hair purse out of it, and and was inspired to create this buffalo hair purse. Make sure I washed it with Dove shampoo. And so here's the finished piece, the box, the buffalo box, and the painting of the starburst image that to me reflects our origin stories. We come from the stars, and the image on the right is my first draft. I like watercolor, and so I painted the image in watercolor and how it would look, and those are the mountains behind Banff Centre that I wanted to paint on this buffalo box. And so some of my dreams and visions, I think I'll try to wrap it up here in a couple minutes. I work with, I worked with the Treaty Land Sharing Network. We worked with them to get these buffalo boulders, these grandfathers to Regina, and I placed them in the shape of a buffalo, about bigger than the size of a soccer field, maybe twice the size of a soccer field. And if they're in a park just 4 blocks north of where I live. And we had ceremony for this buffalo effigy, and I made sure that we had one of the boulders that we were able to have a pipe and a feast for afterwards, and activate them. So creating that safe space for our matriarchs. And just like to end with, I went to BC, Vancouver Island in February, and my practice is land-based, and I thought, what, I want to leave the energy of the buffalo on this island, because I heard that there were 3 sites found on Vancouver Island of buffalo kill sites, or buffalo bone sites. And I have some research to do, but there's buffalo on the island, and so it motivated me to create these buffalo images on the beaches all along Vancouver Island. And I just wanted to end by sharing, that to say Pinama'ai, to thank you for coming, and thank you for listening, and listening to my stories about, creating sacred, safe spaces for matriarchs, which ultimately leads to our children. And, here's another buffalo effigy that we're building in the community here, just over by Regina Beach, and that we're getting the youth to create, one stone, one grandfather at a time. Yeah, so I think that's it. I just wanted to end with this thought. This is a time for the women. This is about our growth, or to help our communities and find our rightful places in our roles as mothers, grandmothers, matriarchs, leaders, visionaries, medicine people, and knowledge keepers. And so I'm so grateful to Janine and Tambry and the team at the Banff Centre for providing this safe place for me to share this story, and share part of my art, and share part of my knowledge. And I hope you all enjoyed this afternoon. Thanks for taking some time to sit with me. I really appreciate it. yeah, all my relations, the Takiwasan.
Tiniki, I feel like I shouldn't be talking. I just want to keep listening. Yeah, this hour flew by really fast. And one thing that I would always say always amazes me about your practice is how holistic it is in terms of you're coming from a place bringing community into it. And I remember one time we did the Parfleche bookmarks at the Mackenzie Art Gallery. You
Yeah.
had them all cut up and you told me, we just need to get it in their hands. They need to touch it. They need to feel it. They need to connect with it. And so, for me, how you made it so accessible and hands-on impacted me in terms of the work that I was doing. So when I came here and I was like, wow, the Banff Center's on a big Buffalo Mountain. There's the perfect person I know who would love this space. And so, yeah, I appreciate you coming for the program as our faculty, for joining us on decolonizing the narrative. And I look forward to tomorrow's conversation. Oh, looks like everybody wants your attention. So we'll wrap up. We definitely welcome everyone to join us tomorrow at 4:30, and we'll continue the conversation more casual. We'll bring in some of the questions. And yeah, so if you didn't bring any questions here today, definitely bring them tomorrow, and look forward to learning more. And also just have to thank the Royal Bank of Canada who sponsored our event. So thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Hello, welcome back. We're continuing our conversation from yesterday with our special guest, Jolie BigEagle-Kequahtooway. My name is Janine Windolf, and I'm the Acting Director of Indigenous Arts and here to help facilitate today's conversation. We wanted to start our session here in a good way, and I'll hand it over to Jolie, who wants to get us started.
Hi there, Mawashte. I always like to start my events with this smudge, and especially when it's through Zoom, because I know that there are people on that I can't see, but I know you guys are there, and so yeah, just like to follow my own protocol regarding smudging and make sure I continue to do that. So so I just like to share how I smudge in case some people out there don't necessarily know how I smudge. So I smudge my eyes to see good things, smudge my mouth to speak good things, smudge my ears to hear, to listen, my mind to share my knowledge, protect my knowledge, share my heart, protect my heart, and then just give gratitude to my body that carries me every day. And then I offer that smudge to you out there and in in the world. And today, during this time that we're together, we're just connected to this invisible thread. And so I just want to send that smudge out to you, and pray that your home fires are well and healthy, and as well as look after our home fires. So yeah, so there we go.
So yeah, yesterday, I really enjoyed just taking that whole hour. I think we could have went a couple hours yesterday. So I imagine there's things you probably wanted to share with us. To start off, was there things you missed that you wanted to share from yesterday?
Yeah, I forgot to share, one of the projects I just finished working on, where there was an artist that came in from New York, and her name is let me just make sure I get her last name right, Marissa John. And so it was for me, it was a bit challenging because it was a bit of a performance piece. And so it was this project she's been working on. It's a passion project of her, and it was called Biblio Bandito. And so she asked us to come up with a character of this kind of like story bandit that she started in Nicaragua. And of course, I said yes to the project. It was way back early spring. And then, as we started getting close to the date of October, I started to read more on what was expected. And I found out that I had to play the part of a bandit. And I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. Am I supposed to, what? That was sometimes I tend to do that with projects I get involved with. I get asked, because it's a small community of Regina, so sometimes I get tapped on the shoulder. Do you want to be involved in this project? And depending on the organization and our relationship, I'm like, okay, well, what's the time expected? Is there a good budget behind it as well? And can I commit that time? And so, this organization, is the Dunlop Art Gallery, and I'm I love the organization. I love the library, right? Because of what it represents, right? And I love books. And so I thought, wow, I got to do this. And so, I got to create a new character that is, I called it my Buffalo Bandito. And so I created this character of this buffalo. I have a buffalo headpiece that I made 2017, working with some artists here in the city. We came together for Canada 150, and we were about bringing back the buffalo. So we worked with one of our community artists, Edward Patra, and Robin Patra, and so we created these horns. He helped to create the horns of the buffalo, and then I wanted the buffalo headdress to be contemporary, and I call it headpiece, not a headdress, and so I got to wear my buffalo headpiece with this bandit eyepiece, and so I wanted to share that with the group, but I of course I have to go and get it, and just want to share that image with the group, and show them, like, that it's okay to challenge yourself. I think part of it is sometimes, I say like, oh, yes, I'll do that. And then I maybe I don't necessarily know how to do that at that moment, but I work on it. I talk to people and try to figure it out. So let me see if I could share my screen. So here's a picture that Marissa took, and she gave me permission to share it. Hopefully you guys can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Oh, wow. And that's quite a robe. Is that a male or a female robe?
I don't know. This actually, can you guys see the whole picture?
Yeah, you zoomed in. So kind of
Yeah.
got like a medium shot of you.
Okay, there. Is that better?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so so the character that she created in Nicaragua was actually looked like a cowboy with the cowboy hat, with this red mask, and had like kind of like the cowboy outfit, the jeans, the some rope. And actually when this Biblio Bandito went into this small village, some of the people thought that he was real, and he left a note on the library door: you better get to have some stories for me, or else I'll be back. And he devoured stories. And so so that was my cue, I guess. I'm this story devourer. So I thought, well, I'm everything buffalo. So we just happened to be at Mama Wiatitan, and they had buffalo robes in the medicine room there. And so I was like, hey, there's a buffalo robe here. I'm this buffalo bandito that's wrap myself in this buffalo robe. And so she took this picture and kind of captured that moment. So now it got me thinking about this character that I'd like to work on, and maybe not a bandit, but there I when I started down this journey, or this path of bringing back the buffalo, I know I went out and I talked to other Buffalo-minded people, like Tasha Hubbard. She's been working with the Buffalo Treaty and also with documentaries around Buffalo. And Donnie Spidell, he refers to himself as a buffalo dancer, right? And so he has a real buffalo headpiece with real buffalo horns, and had a really good talk with him about matriarchy, and that the women should lead this next I guess next era of bringing back the buffalo, and was really encouraging in that aspect. And Adrian Stimson, he calls himself Buffalo Boy, right? And so he's got this alter ego, right, that he brings out in his performance. And I was lucky enough to go to the Remi. That was a few months ago, or this past year, where he did a opening of his exhibition up there, and got to see him perform, and talked to him a little bit afterwards. And he said most of it was improv, that he just improvised on the spot. And I was like, wow, that was really, really interesting to know that, that it was improv, because it seemed like everything happened the way he wanted it to happen. And then I was introduced to another fellow. I just don't remember his name at the top of my head, but let me see. And they, he's what he called himself. Oh, there we go. Here, maybe I could share this. He calls himself Buffalo Man. There, can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so Marcus Ammerman, and he calls himself Buffalo Man. And I thought, well, you know what? I haven't heard of Buffalo Woman, right? And we say Buffalo Woman in Lakota, Dakota say Pate, Pte, Pate. And so I thought maybe that's the gap that's missing, that I could fill in and become this Pate Wea, right? This Wea, it means woman in Nakota. And I thought, oh, maybe that's my calling, right? This maybe I need to create this not I don't even say alter ego, right? But create this, I don't know, persona to help me to share some of my stories. And so, because I'd like to, I know that this, I'm just gonna stop sharing this. I know that part of, I love getting these opportunities to share and to talk, but I know that sometimes our young people, they love TikTok, right? And you remember there was an app a while ago that, oh, I can't remember the app, but I think you're only allowed like 10 seconds. Do you remember that app? It was like a video. It was
Oh,
only
I'm
like
not
10 seconds, I think.
someone
Oh,
fine.
Vine. Yeah, Vine.
Yeah.
Right. And so like the tension span is getting shorter, 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 and like get your message.
Mm.
Right. And so I thought, oh, I'd really love to do some 1-minute videos or TikTok on Buffalo, and and share that with maybe on some of these social media apps that some of the young people are on. Well, I shared this with my daughter, right, last week, and she, she gives it to me straight, right? She's like, Mom, you're trying to be on TikTok. You can't be boring, right? And I'm like,
Uh,
yeah, I
yeah.
know I could be funny and I could be entertaining, and just you wait. And
Yeah.
and so I thought, yeah, I need to maybe step outside my boundary, my safe boundary, and explore this Patewea, and
Mm.
see if is she a cook, right? And is she how does she look? I don't know, but it's part of my art practice, right? It's kind of like I'm doing my master's in fine arts, and that's, I think, something I didn't share yesterday as well. I'm going to school through the low residency Master's of Fine Arts program in Santa Fe. So I don't have to move to Santa Fe, but I get to do the program online. And so I get to be in Santa Fe in July and January for 2 years. And so I get a mentor, and my mentor is Anna Hoover. And so she's been challenging me to, because we, at the end of our 2 years, we have to come up with an art exhibition and also our thesis around that art exhibition. And so she's challenging me to get into the mindset and the character of what my exhibition will be about. And so I'm finding that this Patewia, will help me to see, the process of how I'm going to create this exhibition. And in the end, people are saying, well, because I talk to the other MFA students, and we've talked, well, is this developing into a performance art piece? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see it as that, right? I saw it as very static, and and as visual art piece. That's going to be part visual art, but part sculpture, right? And so did I see it as interactive? I didn't, but I feel like I'm getting inspired being around these other artists, that why can't it be interactive, right? Why can't it be why can't there be songs involved, and stories, and lighting, and activator buttons?
Yeah, why not have it all?
Yeah. So my exhibition is going to cost $1 million.
Okay, so some grants, any funders?
Yeah. So so it's been interesting, because of course you can have all the ideas in the world, but I have to be realistic about it, and understand my limitations, or reaching out for help, and saying, what, I need help in doing this. And I was talking to my husband about Joel Fafard, right? And we were talking about how his I'm not even sure how long ago he passed away, but he's got this legacy, right? And he had created these bronze sculptures of different kinds of um of subjects, and but they're still carrying on his art, because he had a community around him that helped him to build his art. And I believe his son is carrying on his legacy, right? And so my husband's going to go visit their the studio, and I'm like, well, how are they still creating, right, under him, if he's passed away? How does that work, right? And so it's just interesting when you think about, like, what is the legacy, and the imprint, or the footprint that you're leaving, in this world. And so it's got me thinking, about my final exhibition for this MFA. Because part of, just a little part of it was, are we going to assign a price to it if somebody wants to buy it? And I was like, oh, I should be like, is it James Bond that says, like, you've been assigned this task, and if you want to complete this task, whatever, do this, and if you don't, this will self-destruct in
Is
10
that
seconds.
Inspector Gadget?
That's such a
I used to watch that.
Oh, okay, it's Inspector. I'm kind of thinking, geez, I with my final exhibition, I thought, well, geez, I don't know if I don't know if I'm a commercial artist, right? I don't know if I want to sell my piece. Mission Impossible. Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
Hi, Rhonda. Um, so I'm like,
Mm,
why am I in the MFA program? That's it. That's one of the questions, right? And for me, it's about accessing,
mm,
this network, right? It's really the network and
mm,
seeing what's happening, not just in Canada. Well, actually, I'm the only
mm,
Canadian student in the MFA program. So it's mostly an introduction to US artists. And it is just amazing, the the stories that have been written, the articles, the books, the art, and having discussions
mm,
on American art versus First Nations and Indigenous art, right? Is it considered American art? And Canada's in North America, or is Canadian art, are Canadian First Nations artists considered, North American art, or are we in our own, I guess, genre of our own? So there's all these discussions happening at in these classes and amongst my peers and my colleagues, and so it's really, really, I feel like I've only been in class for I think August 5th, well, July for 9 days and August 15th. And I'm already feeling like my even my vocabulary is starting to change. I use narrative quite a bit.
yes.
And but I don't have a BFA. I don't have
Mm,
a bachelor's in fine arts. So to be in this realm with these different levels, the artists at different levels within their career, from young artists to older artists my age.
mm,
I just feel like I'm in the place where I need to be right now. So I appreciate like opportunities that Dunlop has given me, and being able to create this character, right? And so I'm just excited to create this Patawea.
yeah. Well, thinking about that for me, it, you know, intersecting with work and reconciliation and then having an arts practice, I always found being able to share my stories through a video, through performance, through visuals was actually how I was able to have those tougher conversations, because then at least we're feeding into the art and then having that come back. And I will say things like that are like an extension of myself. Like when I was doing performance, I had to get into another part of myself that I couldn't tap into normally when I feel like I'm Janine, the professional. It was always hard for me to move into other parts of me that are more funny sometimes. I don't know, my humor or trying to deal with some of those tougher topics from childhood. But I feel like art really offers that type of, I guess, safety in terms of the things that Indigenous peoples need to share. And so I found you did it naturally, like meeting you. It's probably more than 14 years ago because I'm thinking my kids were just born and they're now
Oh wow.
16 and 17.
Oh
But
wow. Time flies.
yeah, and actually back in that day when I first met you, I realized that it was actually through Michelle Sarada, our late friend,
Oh,
because I
okay.
was part
Yeah.
of the collective performance storytelling group.
Yeah.
And we did that play called Transactions. And
Yeah.
actually, I was like, I'm not a performer. I'm a filmmaker. I kept telling her. She's like, you're going to be a performer. You're going to be a performer. Just, gave me time and training. And so, I remember when I was able to start taking some of these teachings that I had through my family and trying to put a visual to them, she would say, you don't have to say it, let your body do it. And
Mhm.
so that took me a while to get out of my comfort zone. And I feel, watching your practice, you weren't scared to go into these different mediums. You would just try. There was one day we had a popsicle stick with a buffalo and made a video. I'm gonna make a business plan. We need to get this off the ground to talk about teak. Then you
Yeah.
were doing the Buffalo fashion show, Buffalo Day, like, so I was like, anytime you would bring something forward, it was always like a challenge for me to figure out how I can help. But at the same time, you were just moving through and learning along the way. And so I feel like you were always into arts and moving things, but it took you a while to finally say you're an artist, I noticed. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I remember because I think there's people who because I started to sew, right? So I made
Yeah.
fashion, and I started to make fashion. My friends around me were like, because I started making Halloween outfits. Halloween's coming up. Halloween is like my favorite holiday, and so I would make Halloween outfits, for my kids. That's how when I look back, that was when I started. But the critics are the people that you go to in their house asking for candy. So I made my two kids who are 30 and 32, and so they're like 5 or 6 and 4. I made them Lion King outfits, Nala and Simba. And but people they'd go to the door and people like, oh, you guys are such cute dogs. Or they'd be next door, be, oh, you guys are such a little cute cats. And so, okay, my first try at making their outfits was a little bit off. My critics were the neighbors, but Star Wars, I had my daughter, I made her, one of some of the Queen Amidala outfits, with the kind of like the nylon back headrest, kind of not a headrest, but a back piece, and
Yeah.
made my son a Pikachu outfit, and it'd be like there's a wire and it's attached for the tail to the back of your neck. So when you're getting in and out of your costume at the school, be careful of that wire. So
Yeah.
that's how I started. And when you talk about that, people think, oh, that's arts and crafty, right? And so I thought of myself more as like a crafts person. And then when I started to make, graduation outfits for my friends, like just like, like a traditional satin ribbon dress, or not traditional, but I mean like a ribbon dress made out of satin. Or, my friend saw that I could sew, so she challenged me to make her a dress coat with a big, huge collar, and not like a long dress coat. And I was like, I don't know how to make
Mm,
this, but of course I challenged myself. So I said, yeah, I can do it. And I was like, wow, I do not know how to make this. So I
mm,
taught myself how to buy a pattern and how to read it, and rip out seams, and so, I've just been learning, over the years, because some of my grandmothers passed away young, so I wasn't able to go ask them for help. And I didn't have access to some of those resources. So, growing up and as a young woman, I thought of myself as a crafty person, right? And I never thought of myself as an artist, because I was going to school for engineering. And artists, wow, artists, they're up there. I put them on a pedestal, right? And it's like, oh, ooh, you're an artist. Ooh. And living in Calgary, I got to see some amazing artists bloom, and I think of
mm,
Lori Villabrun. She was a cookum, and she was so inspirational, as a cookum performance
mm,
artist, right? And Joan Cardinal Schubert, I got to sit on a board with her, the Calgary Aboriginal Arts Awareness Society board, and I just was a part of that community and that culture in
mm,
Calgary, that it was like I was so close, right? I was on the peripheral of artists, that that but I didn't allow myself to join them, because I felt
mm.
like, because I was a mathematician, an engineer, I was like, I'm a groupie. and
Yeah.
and and so that mindset, was why I couldn't
Mm,
shake that for the longest time. I just felt like I was a groupie, admiring these artists from afar, and that, although I did all this other stuff, that was craft, right? That was, craft work. And didn't promote myself as an artist, because I thought that's another realm that I would strive to be a part of, right? And so I think that's also why I do what I do now, because I'm like, I tell young people, I tell people, older people, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you're an artist, right? Especially when you see what they do, and it's like, oh my God, I never knew
Mhm.
you're an artist, right? Like embrace it. And and so I do my best to promote that amongst especially amongst the Indigenous community I'm in, right?
Yeah, well, I definitely seen that early on. Like I know when I was working at the Mackenzie Art Gallery, I was writing down all the list of people I wanted to work with and trying to figure out, where can they intersect with what I'm doing, which I do here also at the Banff Centre. And so, one of the things we were doing, and I mentioned it just yesterday, was those Parfleche bookmarks. And so I was thinking, the thing that you reminded me was it's not really like they finish it. They can take whatever they need to home. It's more like getting their hands on the medium and having access to those materials, which I always found, sometimes in terms of like, because I come from La Ronge area, moving down to southern Saskatchewan, and up north, it was a little different in terms of we have ways of doing things, but we didn't always frame them, as protocols, or I felt like that there was always some level of feeling like there was gatekeeping to culture. And
Mm,
so I always very much, when I first moved to Regina, felt very much like an outsider
mm,
moving through the art scene. And so, when we did that, and then I also realized going into institution, how can I bring people from community into the space? Because I remember we did that Buffalo fashion show
mm.
and you had materials on Parfleche, and then I had to go back to you and say, okay, I need the conservator to look at it. And then we were in the parking lot and was, checking out your Buffalo, I think it was a corset you made that time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, as institutions, we're always trying to also demystify some of those materials, make them accessible. But I feel like with your practice, you welcome people into your practice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's because I didn't grow up working with buffalo, right? And it wasn't part of, my language. It wasn't part of the stories that were being shared, and it wasn't part of my identity. And so, it feels like I can literally remember the moment when it was started to become urgent that I know more. And that was like June 2010, and it was just like a family picture that me and my husband, our son, wanted to take. And we were like, well, what it was a beautiful June day, and I was like, well, what represents us, right? And so there's a grasshopper here in Regina. There's a beaver, there's a turtle, there's this winged metal creature with its ribs exposed, and so we went to each of those places and we took some beautiful pictures.
Mhm.
But then I was like, well, aren't we aren't we like the Buffalo Nation? Aren't we supposed to be Buffalo people? What does that mean? Then I told my husband, well, let's go look for the buffalo. Where are the buffalo? Right. So it was just a family picture, and then it became an urgent question, right? Where are
Mm,
the buffalo? And so I started to it just felt like I activated something within myself to
mm,
to to be that person that found out about what it meant to be part of that Tatanka Oyate. And I would hear it in ceremony, right? I would hear Tatanka, right? Or we'd hear Pasqua Mustus in some of the Cree songs, right? And it was like, it's there, right? And it's that buffalo skull is there in ceremony and sweat and Sundance and different kinds of ceremony. So it's been there, but I didn't really understand. And so, so a big part of, as I started to, start talking about buffalo and bringing back the buffalo, opening up that boutique called Tatanka Boutique. Then people started, it was like I put on a homing
mhm.
beacon, and that I thought I should do an art project where I, instead of a bat signal, I should do a buffalo signal and shine it bright into the sky, because that's what I've been doing. I've been, through the work that I do, Buffalo Fashion Show, Buffalo workshops, Buffalo storytelling. I even wrote a story about Buffalo, and it's about trying to attract. I'm like the Pied Piper of
Mm.
Buffalo.
Oh,
I
yeah.
should, I got to play a flute or so. I got to play something, or, a rattle, and wanting to bring out, people who have this thirst for Buffalo knowledge.
Mhm.
But telling people, you know what, I don't know everything. I'm looking for those Buffalo stories. I'm looking for those Buffalo songs. I'm looking for those Buffalo ceremonies. I'm looking for, how are we gonna reconnect with that blood memory? So I always tell kids,
Mhm.
especially, like, you have that blood memory in you. It's in your, maybe it's in your little baby toe. Let's activate it, right? So
Mhm.
here's a buffalo, bookmarker, right? Here's a buffalo circle medallion, right? Or, here's a buffalo hide. Hey, let's work on it together. And I think between me and my husband, we probably worked on like 50 buffalo hides and since 2015, right? And sometimes, they've been successful. We make rawhide or we made buffalo robes. Sometimes we've failed miserably, right? And we're like, what's the penance, right?
Yeah.
What's the penance for failing because we've wrecked a hide, right? Or whatever. And we've incorporated smudging into our
Mhm.
protocol, our process, because you know it has brought out blood memory. And sometimes people cry, sometimes they're sad, sometimes they get scared, maybe they get shocked, by the hide, or I don't know, because if unless they share with me, right? But so sometimes they've been repulsed, right? And so, all I say is, I don't know anything. I'm learning just like you. And let's just learn together, right? And oh, I just learned this. Right? Oh, I just learned this, right?
Yeah.
And so, I and it all stemmed from that family, taking those family pictures, 12 years ago.
Mm.
And really it was probably at a moment where I'm like, who am I? Right? Who am I? I've achieved my achieved becoming a civil engineer. I was working as an engineer. I was making a
Mhm.
lot of money. I had a nice car, right? And we were working on buying our first house, right? So it's like, well, okay, so is this it? Is this it? Or it was like, well, who am I? What about that other part of me, the cultural and spiritual part? Who is that? And so that's what informs my practice, right? And it's because I know that I'm not alone, and so that blood memory, that DNA that exists inside of me just reminds me of where I come from. My
Mhm.
grandmother, the ones I talked about yesterday, the matrix, my mother, my
Mhm.
sisters, my brothers, and just how we all affect each other for good or for bad, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh,
trying
for
to
sure.
figure out, taking our identity from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of thirsting for buffalo knowledge, we have a question from yesterday from Marianne Barkhouse. Hi, a friend too. And so, yeah, I just wanted to pull that in because it connects with the buffalo here. So is it possible to use the buffalo hair for felting purposes? I would be interested to hear more about how the hair can be used in addition to other uses for the hide. I would also be interested to hear about those buffalo bone sites on Vancouver Island. I am originally from out that way and always interested in hearing more stories. My people are salmon centric. It would be great to have a collaborative salmon bison works. I wanted
Mhm.
to bring that in because our time is flying pretty fast here.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a tough question. So, I look at the work that I do around Buffalo, and so, we've been able to create rawhide or parfleche out of buffalo. So scraping the flesh off, scraping the hair off, and using that rawhide for drums, for rattles, for jewelry, for fashion. And so when I scrape, if it's like we just worked on some fresh buffalo hides here 2 weekends ago. And so we're like, you could, scrape off that flesh, but you can, if there's meat left on it, you could just cut that off, wrap it around a stick, and we could have it over fire, and so, and when I first started to do this work, I saved the skin shavings, right? Especially from once it's dry. And then, because I've heard that you can melt it or boil it down to hide glue. And then you could use that to repair the hide if there's holes, and stitch it up too. And then you wouldn't be able to tell that there's even a hole there, and so I've done that, once. And then I would save the hair, but the hair follicles, they're attached to the skin. So you'd have to, take some time, I think, to what you say, carding, like cleaning it and cleaning. And I've talked to a few people who work with yarn and wool. I know there's an artist here in Regina who does felting. And I've talked to her and said, we got to get together. I have hair, but then they would, some of the people would advise me, well, some parts of the buffalo hair are usable, and some of them are softer versus other parts. So when I'm scraping the hair off, I don't necessarily think about, like, this is some of the leg, this is the other leg, here's the bottom legs, and the softest parts, they say, are under, the arms, where the buffalo walk. And so, I'm like, oh, I should save that. And I went to a store in Banff, last year, and they sold they sell, I don't know if they still do, but there's buffalo wool sold in one of the stores. And it was like, it was only like a little not even four, maybe a 3-inch ball, and they were charging $65. I
Oh,
was this close to getting it because I've been learning how
yeah.
to yarn. No, is it not yarn? Knit. So
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet,
Mm.
but I've been told that it's doable, right?
Yeah.
And so when they say that, and that's, people have said, Joel, you should do your PhD on all the uses of the buffalo. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Mm.
Because I've heard we can take the bladder of the stomach, clean it out, and use it like a Ziploc bag, right? And I've heard you can use gallstone, the liquid in the gallbladder. You could use that for painting, right? And so, I know that I've been at buffalo harvest where, we've skinned the hide, and then you take the innards of the buffalo. You can use, some people love eating tripe, right? And so, but I have no idea how to clean tripe. And I'm not
Yeah.
a fan of tripe. I don't know if everybody knows what tripe is, but
Like,
it's the intestines, right? And
yeah.
to clean them. But so there was a lady who's brought out, and she cleaned, it, and then they made some soup out of it, right? So when we talk about using every part of the buffalo, I imagine that, when we were at
Mm.
the peak of harvesting buffalo, that everybody knew their role, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what, I'm looking after this hide, right? Somebody look after the bladder. You over there, you do the tripe,
Mm.
and you look after the heart, right? And the liver,
Yeah.
right? And this organ, or the eyeballs. That question came up yesterday, because my husband is working on buffalo skulls, and took them to a school over here, Mother Teresa. And one of the girls said, can I have the eyeballs? And my
Mm.
husband was like, what are you gonna do with the eyeballs? And she's like, And so he told, I guess you could dry them out, but it was like, yeah, what about, you never hear about this, what is the purpose of a
Mm,
buffalo eyeball, right? If we use every part of it. So
mm,
there's definitely some traditional teachings there. There's some contemporary possibilities, but I don't have the capabilities to use every part of the buffalo. I just my garage would be full of hair and eyeballs and
mm,
skulls and bladders and yeah, and skin.
mm.
So I have kept some of it, thinking I'm going to use this,
Yeah.
but if anybody out there does want buffalo hair, and you could let me know, and I would definitely send you some in the mail. It wouldn't be clean though. You have to clean it yourself.
Well, you got to get your hands on it. Actually, we got a comment from a friend of mine, Louise Perrin, who said it is feasible to use buffalo hair for felting. The softer part would be easier to card and spin, and they do it with musk ox yarn. Thank you,
Oh,
Louise, for sharing that. And then I see
yeah.
Marianne has another question for you here. With your civil engineering background you thought of doing public artworks? You would be amazing and could bring together these narratives you have been working with in terms of community and Buffalo and creating permanent works that would totally complement your performative works as well as the other materials you work with.
Yeah, good question. So I have been creating and I call them effigies, and so we were having discussion that maybe effigy isn't the word.
Mm,
I don't know the Nakota way of saying it, but I have created some public art pieces. Um and I think about it from like a land-based point of view, is like what is my footprint on this land, and when I look at my ancestors, they've left, they didn't necessarily leave landmarks that we think about as terms of legacy, but they left things like medicine wheels, teepee rings, earth mounds, right? And a lot of these things have connections to those celestial connections, celestial stories, origin stories, right? And so part of me thinks, well, how am I how do or the question I have for myself, how do we carry these legacies on? Can we build medicine wheels now for 1,000 years from now, right? And that's a big question, and that's not for an artist, that's not for an individual, that's for community, and so I've started in building these buffalo effigies, and so the one I was talking about yesterday about bringing these, I think we brought 17 boulders, right? And I'd hoped that they were huge. I wanted the hugest boulder that, because we could say grandfather. So I went to go visit this farm south of Moose Jaw, one of the farmers that we've connected with the Treaty Land Sharing Network. And because when you find, I put together this project, we'll get boulders, we'll place them in the shape of a buffalo, in an area that's outside of the soccer field, so it's bigger than the soccer field.
mm,
And then when I went to go check out prices, I'm like, boulders are,
mm,
$500. And my art budget wasn't that big. So we
Yeah.
used our resources and went to Moose Jaw, and he said, oh, you guys can have any boulders you
Mm,
want on this land for free. And so the cost was to get them here to the city, right?
mm,
And so, it was about also asking if they wanted to come, right? And so going to the
mm,
land and offering tobacco, and I was like, oh no, what if they don't want to come?
mm,
Then what? Right. And so we offered tobacco, we listened, and the answer we heard back was yes, that they wanted to come. And so we had ceremony after they were placed. We said, well, we're going to have a pipe ceremony. We'll set up a teepee or over top of one of them. And when we placed it too, I said, this is the one we're going to have ceremony with, right? And it ends up being the rear leg, and so that was, that's part of my art practice is ceremony and activating this buffalo effigy. So, that you could only take a picture of it from the sky, right? To see the outline, but even then you might not see the outline because there's trees in the way. But it's, to me, that they get more and more activated the more people touch them, sit on them, run to them. So my hope is that people walk the outline of the buffalo and feel safe in that space. And that's, in my community. And so that's one way of respond to a public art call out. I have another idea to make a bigger buffalo effigy.
Yes, I remember hearing that one. I think do it. You've done
I
so much.
know, I know. I definitely want to do it, especially because when you look at Regina, you could see that buffalo, right? In that
Yeah.
shape. And it's like, it just, sometimes part of my art practice is when I have an idea or a vision or a daydream, and it's like,
Mm.
it starts to, it's like Jumanji, so
Yeah.
it's like, it's just like vibrating within me, right? And it's
Yeah.
just vibrating, and I'm like, I gotta release it and let it go so that I can focus on the next thing, or just be able to
Mm.
carry on, or to be inspired by that piece or that art, so I could do the next one. So it's
Yeah.
like, sometimes it's a low beat, it's a low hum, right? So some things resonate lower for me. And so
Yeah.
it's whatever comes to the surface that's like, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
like, okay.
the idea of the rocks, though, like being that almost embrace, I was taught because on every corner of my house, and there's not just four in this house, but I have stones that I have in every corner. And
Mm,
every full moon, I'll put them out and then pull them back in. But for
mm,
me, I always feel safer when I do that, especially when I move into a new house, because, you got to send the other energy away that was there before,
yeah,
so got to welcome your energy back and call it to you. And then those rocks kind of help like that sense of safety.
yeah,
And so, for me, it's just within my physical home. And, but it's important for me, even in my Regina house, they're on every window, which my dad didn't want to remove because I go back and forth. So they're still on the windows there. I see actually there is someone who wants to take you up on your offer,
oh,
Louise.
really?
Yeah, so I don't know how you want to get in contact with anyone interested in getting some of the bison fur to be creative with.
Yeah. Well, my email is, can I share my email?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay. Maybe somebody could write it, but it's just buffalopeople@gmail.com. So if anybody, is interested in buffalo hair, yeah, I have some buffalo hair, and, like I said, it might not, it won't be cleaned, but that's part of the process. And just let me know. I would love for other people. That's why I started saving it. I hate to throw it
mm,
away, or I hate for it not to be used.
mm,
And so if somebody else out there has the capabilities,
no.
and that is able to, then yeah, I definitely would send it out.
Well, you got two keeners in the chat, and
Okay,
yeah,
good.
definitely they would make good use out of it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, because we were talking about matriarchs and, anybody who's aware of my practice, I'm always talking about my mom or echoing my grandmother, people who've passed, but I was always taught that, they were my main educators growing up. And so when I first started, I don't know if when you're writing those essays, my mom says, and then I used to get like, why do you keep quoting your mom? And so, that pushback in the academic setting was kind of different. But then within my practice, she was part of Stories Are in Our Bones. And then when she heard, because she's a moose hunter, she's living on the land.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I know someone who wants the moose shoulder bones. So she was collecting them for you,
Oh,
which we brought here to the Banff Centre and you turned them into tools. So I was like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, those matriarchs come in, even if they're just behind the scenes. But
Yeah.
she was like, pretty surprised someone actually wanted that piece because she doesn't like throwing things away too. So they were just sitting
Yeah.
in her freezer.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah. I think that's part of bringing back some of those community teachings, right? So, it's funny because there's another individual here in the city who's working on hides. And I think it was last weekend, or my husband found a moose. There was a moose in the ditch, and so he stopped and he had his knife and he was cutting off the front legs of the moose. And I guess somebody had phoned up this other hide worker and said, "There's a moose in the ditch." And so just as he pulled up and he was cutting the front leg of the moose off, this other person came up and was like, "I'm too late." So, my husband was like, "Oh, you know what? Here, I'll give you one." And so gave him one so that he didn't come all the way out from Regina for nothing. So, so it's like, yeah, it's community, right? It's really community. I know that as we get older, I'm like, we need younger backs. We need more people to do this work. And
Yeah.
so, my granddaughter's 3 and she's sometimes people come up to us with the hide and they'll be like, "What is this? A bear? Or is this a deer?" "No, it's too big for a deer," but she'll come up and she's like,
Mm,
"Tatanka." She
yeah.
recognizes, and that's if she sees the flesh side, she just knows now. And she's 3 and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine like her world. I hope she continues to love Tatanka.
Oh, well, definitely you've encouraged my spirit and many others in the community. And so I know we're coming up to the last couple minutes,
Yeah, geez.
but time has been flying here.
Yeah, it's been really good to see. It's like we're having a chat, and catching up and just talking about buffalo. So, it just seems like for me the conversation flows.
Well, and I definitely love talking buffalo and
Yeah.
moose and porcupine. Actually, thinking of which, I remember my first culture shock with a porcupine was one time I came home. I think I was 17, went to Belfort Collegiate. There's a dead porcupine sitting on my table, pliers, and my mom was sitting there waiting for me. And at that time, I didn't appreciate, the gifts that my mom was giving me, but she made me sit there and pluck it out
Yeah.
and pluck it out. And I remember, at first feeling like, embarrassed, like, what am I doing? But then after, when we dyed it and then started working with it, and then they became moccasins for my dad.
Oh,
And
wow.
then once we did that, and I seen it from that process to these
Yeah.
beautiful moccasins that he will only pull out in ceremony,
Yeah.
for me, that made me realize what my mom was trying to teach me in
Yeah.
those gifts. And I feel like that spirit, that even though maybe we don't always understand where they're coming from, but
Yeah.
definitely if you carry that journey through, there's some amazing outcomes. And so I look forward to the work that you're doing, and I appreciate our time here. And, because I'm Woodland Cree, I'll say Tiniki for your time. And thank you for everyone who made it here today. It's really lovely to see familiar faces in the chat. Well, names, I don't see your faces. But yeah, just to know that you're here in that circle. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, big
Well, thank
thank you.
you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. and thanks for all the people that showed up today too. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's still light out. So
Yes, and a big thank you
yeah,
to our team here, Tambri and Mitch, who are running things behind the scenes.
yeah. So Pinama I Matakiwasan, to sure look forward to seeing you guys again soon, some way, somewhere, somehow. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up. Thanks,
Right.
everyone.
All right, Doksha, which means see you in my language.